Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I've got to tell you, I've been practicing for this speech like no other. I've spoken before Republican conventions and caucus, before classrooms for a very long time, since I had hair up here and no hair down here. But this speech has gotten to me more than any other. The other night I woke up at 3:30 in the morning from a dream which told me what to say. And I spent the next hour and a half writing down notes from this dream. Yesterday I tried to transcribe it to typing, and 45 minutes into that transcription I realized maybe I'm trying to say too much. You see, 30 years ago I was sitting where you're sitting right now. I'm a proud member of Lyman Hall High School's class of 1984. And like you, I was sitting in the heat with far more mosquitoes, with my future ahead. And what this has meant to me, you can't know. Not only is it an opportunity for me to tell you what I've learned these past 30 years, you've given me a gift that I never would have expected. Like many of you, I didn't know what I was going to be doing next year. Like many of you, it wasn't until April or May that it became clear what school I was going to go to next year. Like you, I felt the vertiginous, gut-liquefying fear of the future that comes when you don't know where your next step is going to fall, onto hard rock or thin air. And then I got a call during April vacation from Mr. Carpenter with your absolutely magnificent invitation to return to a place I love, to people who I admire and feel at one with and feel comfortable with, and to say a few words. 2 days later, I got a call from the Panhandle of Idaho, a charter school called Coeur d'Alene Charter Academy, and they wanted to interview me. They had seen some YouTube videos I had made, and despite that, they decided that they wanted to talk more to me. And a big thing that featured in my interview was your invitation. In fact, it is possible that your invitation got me the job. Therefore, I can blame you for the 3,000-mile move that my wife and I are now going through and all the headaches that involves. Anytime. Guys, it has meant more to me than you could know. Because it tells me that you already learned the one thing that I would teach. Yes, 30 years ago I was a high school student and I was graduating. I have a niece who's exactly your age, reminds me a lot of Hannah. She's graduating from Arkport Unified School in 3 weeks. Her school keeps their seniors until the end of June, those barbarians. Thank you. Now, what have I learned? What kept me up the other night was talking about the scale of the universe. For example, here we sit to the west of Sacopee Valley High School, south of South Hiram Road, in the town of Hiram, near the junctions of Oxford, York, and Cumberland counties, near the confluence of the Sacopee and the Saco and Ossipee rivers, in Maine, northeasternmost of the New England states, part of the continental United States, central third of the North American continent, part of the northern and western hemispheres, of planet Sol 3, otherwise known as Tellus Terra, or the Earth, third of 9 planets orbiting our sun, part of the local star cluster, part of the Orion spiral arm of the Milky Way galaxy, orbited by the 2 Magellanic Clouds, part of the local galactic cluster, part of the local galactic supercluster, because scientists run out of names, I guess, one of almost infinite galactic superclusters that make up the known universe of space and time, which is only one possible dimension of existence in the macrocosmic all. This is how I started all my classes. These young people are brainwashed into thinking there's something charming about it. But that space, that vastness of space is there right now, above us. It exists. And yet in all of that space, each of us is unique. I've met many people like you You'll meet very few people like me. But in all of the universe, in all of God's creation, there is no one precisely like you. You are unique, never having existed before, never will exist again. And it's not just a matter of space, it's a matter of time. The person that you were 5 years ago, 5 months ago, or 5 minutes ago is not who you are now. Who you are now, remember this moment. Remember it. It is one of the great moments. I remember the fall of the Berlin Wall. I remember 9/11. I remember my high school graduation. I remember my wedding day. There are very few days that echo through my mind. This is one of them. Remember it. Because 5 hours from now when you're celebrating, or 5 years from now when you're young adults graduating from college, or finishing your first tour in the military, or becoming skilled tradesmen, or having a family, this moment is special. It's a turning point. Never having been experienced before, never to be repeated again. It's unique. And in the world of economics, the laws of supply and demand say that the more unique a thing is, the more precious it is. Maine lobster costs a heck of a lot more in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho than it costs here. Thank you very much. And what that means is, whether you are a devotee of the theory of evolution, you are the descendants of the survivors of 3.5 million years of brutal history. You are precious. If you are a religious person and you believe that you have an immortal soul given to you by the gods or the Lord God Almighty, you are precious because you have a bit of the universe in you. Maybe your job is to figure this universe out, each from your own perspective. And that's what it comes down to. Is there a secret that I've learned in 30 years of life, of pain, that you'll experience too? There will be moments where you're on the ground gasping like life has punched you in the gut. Remember, the moment will pass. Because there's something inside you, and you experience it yourself. If you love hunting and you're stalking in the woods. If you love working on machinery and you figure out how to fix that engine. If you love knowledge and you have an epiphany. If you love another person and they love you back. The inner voice, the conscience, the soul. I'm going to close with this, and the closing's going to take a few minutes, so bear with me. Being good, being the person that your dog believes you are, being the person that you want your grandparents to think you are, being the best person you can be, isn't just moral, it's practical. 2 men are born into a country where they're born second-class citizens. Because they are born natives, they do not go to the best schools. Their families do not own the best land. They do not have the opportunity to rise in society as the talents they have would give them to rise. In fact, they're part of an oppressed majority. Robert Mugabe in Rhodesia, Nelson Mandela in South Africa. And both of these men received an education, which was a key to figuring out some things in the world. And with that education, they turned to change the world, as Ms. Deemer was talking about. Both of them spoke out against the injustice of being a second-class citizen in your own country. Both of them led organized movements to change. Both of them were jailed. Both of them suffered torture. For decades, they were jailed. Both of them lived to see their countries changed. Rhodesia became Zimbabwe with black African majority rule. Nelson Mandela lived to see something I never would have expected, and I've studied South African history. The white government giving up power voluntarily to share power. And both these men became presidents of their country. And here's the story. Here's what it has to do with this soul thing, this conscience thing that I was telling you about. Robert Mugabe did what his viscera, his gut told him to do. Retribution! They took our land. They took our opportunities. We will take it back. Zimbabwe for the African, but not just any African. There are two great tribes in Zimbabwe, the Shona and the Ndebele. The Ndebele were persecuted because they weren't Mugabe's people. They weren't Mashona. Whites were driven out of Zimbabwe. Asians were driven out of Zimbabwe. The Matabele or Ndebele were persecuted within Zimbabwe. Any Shona that was not a member of Mugabe's party was driven from wealth, from power, from security. Retribution. Today, 500,000 Zimbabwe dollars won't buy you a candy bar. Nothing works. Mandela, who suffered the same, arguably worse hardships, embraced the idea of reconciliation rather than retribution. Instead of seeking revenge and payback, he tried to find a way for people who had never worked together before to live together in peace. And his legacy is a South Africa of black and brown and yellow and white, people of all backgrounds, working together as one, because that is what the angels of his better nature told him was the best destiny of South Africa. Do not settle, ladies and gentlemen. You have a future ahead of you that's in your hands. In America, you're free. You can't blame your parents for your lives. After a while, it's your fault and your responsibility. Don't settle in love. Marry the one you love, or don't marry at all. Don't settle in career. Do what you need to do to earn a living, but go for your dream. Dream big dreams. Live lives that are epic. Be brave. Sacopeans, go forth. Thank you.